Let's go back to our example from a previous video, where you have a client who wants to buy a new home, but to afford the new house, they need the proceeds from their current home. And this time, they already have an offer pending on their current home. What do? You use the buyer's pending sale of property contingency addendum. This addendum provides the seller of the home your client wants to make an offer on with necessary information to decide whether to accept your client's offer. Essentially, this addendum is trying to help your buyer persuade the seller to accept their offer, showing that their current home is well on its way to closing, making their offer stronger than someone whose contingent home isn't even on the market yet. Typically, as a seller, the first offer they would want to accept is an all-cash offer, followed by a contingent house with a closing date that's close, then an offer contingent on financing, and finally, an offer contingent on selling their current home. This addendum can help your client bring a stronger offer in the seller's eyes, as they would fall into position 2 in this latter example. Now that we know its importance, let's take a quick overview of what the buyer's pending sale of property contingency addendum consists of. This addendum is rather short, with a total of 6 sections. The first section is pending sale of buyer's property. This section gives the seller information on the buyer's current home and the date on the current PSA they have accepted. Section 2 states that the closing date on the buyer's current property cannot be extended without the seller's written consent if the closing date would delay the closing of this agreement. Section 3 covers the terms that need to be followed if the buyer's property fails to close of no fault of the buyer and ensures they get their earnest money back. Section 4 lays out when the buyer needs to notify the seller if they learn their pending sale has failed. Section 5 waives all other contingencies of the buyer, such as financing and inspection, claiming they will buy the house regardless as long as their current home sells. Section 6 is rarely used, but leaves room for any other agreements concerning the pending sale contingency. Now let's go over some key points you'll want to focus on as we go over the buyer's pending sale contingency agreement in depth. Key point number 1. You'll want to pay attention to everything that needs to be attached to this addendum, making sure you disclose how far along your buyer is in the process of closing their current home. Key point number 2 is paying attention to what protections your buyer has if their current pending sale does fail. Key point number 3 is understanding how to give prompt and professional notice to the seller if the pending sale fails. 2 common pitfalls to avoid when working with this addendum are: first, failing to use the addendum and including an attached copy of the full PSA to show the seller the strength of your buyer's offer. And second, failing to get seller's written consent if the buyer needs an extension of closing date on their pending sale. Now that we know what not to do, let's focus on what we should do. The main goal you should be able to achieve after our in-depth training is using this addendum to strengthen your buyer's offer and enticing the seller to accept your offer above others. Our biggest pro tip to help you through a pending sale contingency is to provide as much info as possible to the listing agent about your client's pending sale and where you are at in the process. Make sure to follow up with the agent and keep them up to date as you move further along in the process. Think about the information you and your client would want if you were in their shoes. You are now ready to do an initial read-through of the buyer's pending sale of property contingency addendum, and then dive into our in-depth training.